David, a shepherd-turned-warrior, led some of the most legendary battles recorded in biblical history. His story is one of bravery, faith, and strategic genius. From defeating a mighty giant with a single stone to leading armies against overwhelming odds, David's battles not only shaped the nation of Israel but have inspired generations of readers. In this video, we will explore the incredible battles fought by David, his tactics, and the powerful lessons they hold. Let us begin with young shepherd David's battles in the wilderness. So yes, before David became a mighty warrior and the king of Israel, he was a humble shepherd in the hills of Bethlehem. But even as a young shepherd, David fought battles that would prepare him for his future. His courage, honed by his love for his sheep, and his faith, was displayed in epic confrontations with wild beasts. In ancient Israel, shepherds were responsible for more than just guiding and grazing their sheep. They lived in constant vigilance, protecting their flocks from wild predators and thieves. So as David grew, he took his responsibility seriously. Every sheep mattered to him, and he was willing to risk his life to ensure their safety. The wilderness was not only his workplace, but his training ground, a place where he learned courage, resilience, and faith in God. David's first recorded battle was not against a man or an army, but a lion. Imagine you are just a boy alone in the wild, and suddenly, you spot a lion creeping toward your sheep. David had a choice. He could run and, with precise aim, David launched a stone from his sling, hitting the lion with stunning accuracy. But that wasn't the end. The lion, though injured, continued its attack. So David did something even more incredible. He went after the beast, seized it by its mane, and struck it down, delivering his flock from certain danger. This battle was a powerful testament to David's bravery and his loyalty. He valued his responsibility over his own safety, a trait that would later define his leadership as king. David's next battle in the wilderness was also intense. This time, his enemy was a bear, another fierce predator known for its strength and ferocity. Without hesitation, David moved into action. Just like with the lion, he understood that his duty as a shepherd was to protect, even if it meant risking his own life. Despite the danger, David closed in on the bear. He didn't retreat or back down. He fought the bear head-on. These battles were not just physical confrontations. They were acts of profound courage. David's willingness to fight powerful enemies for the sake of his flock showed a heart of selflessness, a heart that would later resonate in his role as king. David's battles with the lion and the bear were not just physical victories. They were spiritual lessons. Every time David fought for his flock, he learned to trust in God's strength over his own. These wilderness battles were training for David's future. When he later faced the giant Goliath, he drew on his experiences fighting the lion and the bear. He remembered that God had delivered him in the past, and he trusted that God would deliver him again. David famously declared to King Saul, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." This was a moment of faith rooted in his experiences as a shepherd. David's battles in the wilderness may seem small compared to the great wars he fought as king, but they were essential. They prepared him, refined him, and shaped his character. They taught him to value his duty, to stand firm in the face of danger, and to rely on God's strength above all else. The battles David fought as a young shepherd reveal a powerful truth. Often, our greatest battles are the ones fought in quiet places, unseen by others, but deeply formative. David's courage and faith in the wilderness set the stage for his future as a leader and hero of Israel. Another battle was that with Goliath, which began in the valley of Elah, where two mighty armies of the Philistines and the Israelites have set up camp on opposing hillsides. The Philistines, enemies of Israel, had brought forth their champion, a giant named Goliath. For 40 days, Goliath taunted the Israelite army, demanding a one-on-one battle. But no one dared to accept. Goliath was not just any warrior. Clad in armor weighing over 125 pounds and wielding a massive spear, he was the ultimate weapon. Israel's army was paralyzed with fear. But in the nearby town of Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David was about to change everything. David, the youngest son of Jesse, was not a soldier. He was a shepherd, sent by his father to deliver food to his brothers on the battlefield. David arrived at the Israelite camp just as Goliath issued another challenge. But instead of feeling fear, David felt something different: outrage. David could not believe that the armies of Israel would allow Goliath to defy them and insult their God. When he asked the soldiers why no one had accepted Goliath's challenge, they laughed, dismissing him as just a boy. But David was undeterred. Word reached King Saul that a young shepherd wanted to face Goliath. Skeptical, Saul tried to dissuade David, reminding him of Goliath's experience and strength. But David's response was unforgettable. David said to the king, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." David's confidence came not from his own strength, but from his faith in God. Seeing David's determination, Saul offered him his own armor and sword, but the armor was too heavy and cumbersome. David quickly realized he did not need it. Instead, David took only his staff, his sling, and 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. He was not going to face Goliath with conventional weapons, but with the same tools he used as a shepherd. As David stepped onto the battlefield, Goliath could not believe his eyes. "This was Israel's champion?" he queried. A young boy with no armor, no sword, filled with disdain, Goliath mocked David, cursing him and vowing to destroy him. Goliath even said, "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" But David responded by saying, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands." With his declaration made, David took action. He reached into his pouch, took out a stone, placed it in his sling, and swung it with practiced precision. David's victory was not just a physical triumph. It was a demonstration of faith over fear, of God's power over human strength. As Goliath lay defeated, the Philistine army, seeing their champion dead, fled in terror. Israel's soldiers, inspired by David's bravery, charged after them, winning a decisive victory. David's life would. The story of David and Goliath has become one of the most famous tales of courage in history. It's a reminder that true strength does not come from weapons or size, but from the heart and faith. We all face giants in our lives, challenges that seem impossible to overcome. But like David, we can find strength in knowing that we are not alone. Faith, resilience, and courage can conquer even the greatest of obstacles. Throughout his life, David fought many battles, but one of the most significant was his confrontation with the Philistines at Baal-perazim. This battle was not just a victory for Israel. It was a moment where God's power was visibly demonstrated, establishing David's leadership and God's promise to Israel. David's faith and reliance on divine guidance led him to a decisive victory over the Philistines. After Saul's death, David was anointed king over Israel. His rise to power marked a new chapter for the nation, but it also sparked jealousy and aggression from Israel's longtime enemies, the Philistines. The Philistines saw David's anointment as a threat and sought to challenge his authority immediately. They gathered their forces and advanced into the valley of Rephaim, not far from Jerusalem. This was a strategic move aimed at intimidating Israel and disrupting David's leadership before it could take root. David, faced with a powerful and well-prepared enemy, knew he could not rely on his own strength alone. Before taking any action, he turned to God for guidance, seeking his will on whether he should engage the Philistines in battle. Rather than charging into battle, he asked God a simple yet profound question: Shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hands? David's approach reflects his heart, a leader who placed his faith in God's direction over human strategy. And God's answer was clear. Go, for I will surely deliver the Philistines into your hands. This assurance emboldened David, knowing that he was not just with God's blessing. David led his army into the valley of Rephaim to face the Philistines. The two forces clashed at a place that would soon be known as Baal-perazim. The battle was intense, but from the very start, it was clear that something extraordinary was happening. David's forces pushed forward with a strength and momentum that the Philistines could not withstand. The name Baal-perazim means the Lord of breakthroughs, and this name captures the essence of what happened that day. David proclaimed, as waters break out, so the Lord has broken out against my enemies before me. This was no ordinary victory. It was a divine breakthrough, a clear sign of God's favor and blessing upon Israel, and upon David as its leader. After their defeat, the Philistines abandoned their idols on the battlefield in their haste to retreat. In Philistine culture, these idols were symbols of protection and power, and leaving them behind was a sign of total defeat. But David would not allow these idols to remain. Following God's instructions, he and his men gathered the idols and destroyed them, ensuring that Israel's victory was also a spiritual triumph, a declaration that no God could stand against the power of the one true God. But the Philistines did not give up easily. Not long after their defeat at Baal-perazim, they regrouped and returned to the valley of Rephaim. It was as if they had not learned their lesson. David, however, did not assume that he should fight them the same way as before. Once again, he sought God's guidance, and this time God gave him a different strategy. God instructed David to circle around behind the Philistines and wait for the sound of marching in the tops of the trees. This signal would indicate that God's presence had gone before him, and it would be the moment to attack. Just as God promised, David heard the sound of marching in the treetops. It was the sign that God's heavenly forces were moving ahead, preparing the way for victory. At that moment, David's army attacked. With precision and divine timing, David's forces overwhelmed the Philistines once again. This second victory reinforced that God's favor was with David, and that his success came not from human might but from following divine guidance. David's victories at Baal-perazim are more than stories of military success. They are a testament to the importance of faith, obedience, and seeking God's will in every situation. David's willingness to seek God's guidance both at Baal-perazim and during the Philistine second attack demonstrates the power of relying on divine wisdom over human understanding. Each victory was a reminder that God is a breakthrough for those who place their trust in him. The story of Baal-perazim teaches us that breakthrough often comes through humility, prayer, and obedience. David's victories remind us that God's guidance is available, and when we lean on him, we can overcome even the greatest of challenges. David, the shepherd boy who became Israel's greatest king, faced numerous challenges in his reign. While his faith in God brought him victory over Goliath and protection from King Saul, it was in his battles with the Ammonites and Syrians that his courage, strategic mind, and reliance on divine guidance were truly put to the test. Let's explore these fierce conflicts and see how David's trust in God led to victory against seemingly insurmountable odds. Our story begins with a gesture of kindness. After the death of Nahash, the king of the Ammonites and a former ally of Israel, David sent a delegation to express his condolences to Nahash's son Hanun. However, this simple act of friendship was misinterpreted. Advisors to Hanun, the new Ammonite king, planted seeds of suspicion, suggesting that David's men were spies sent to scout the land for an invasion. Acting on this mistrust, Hanun humiliated David's men, shaving half their beards and cutting their robes before sending them back to Israel in disgrace. Such an insult was not just a slight against David, it was an affront to the nation of Israel. David, outraged by this treatment of his envoys, prepared for war. Meanwhile, the Ammonites, realizing they had provoked the mighty king of Israel, sought help from mercenaries among the Syrians, hiring thousands of Syrian soldiers to bolster their forces. To confront the combined forces of the Ammonites and Syrians, David called upon Joab, his trusted commander. The scene was set for a high-stakes conflict that would test the strength and unity of Israel's army. When the Israelite army arrived, they found themselves in a tactical disadvantage. The Ammonites had stationed themselves at the city gates, while the Syrians approached from the open fields. This placed the Israelite forces between two enemies, threatening to surround them. But Joab was a seasoned warrior. Seeing the threat, he divided Israel's army. He took the elite soldiers to face the Syrians, while his brother Abishai would lead the remaining troops against the Ammonites. Joab speaks to his troops, "Be strong, and let us show ourselves courageous for our people and for the cities of our God. And may the Lord do what is good in his sight." The battle commenced with intense ferocity. Joab led his troops against the Syrians, and as soon as the Syrian forces saw the disciplined approach of Israel's elite soldiers, they lost their courage and retreated. But the conflict was not over yet. The Syrians, humiliated by their defeat, regrouped and summoned reinforcements from beyond the Euphrates River. Under the leadership of Hadadezer, they returned with a massive army, determined to crush Israel. David, seeing the seriousness of the threat, took personal command of his troops and led them across the Jordan River to confront the Syrians. This battle would be one of the largest and most. The two armies met on the battlefield, and the ensuing conflict was brutal. David's forces clashed with the Syrians in a fierce and unrelenting battle. But the Syrians, despite their numbers and strength, could not withstand the skill and determination of Israel's forces. With God's favor and David's leadership, Israel once again triumphed. The Syrians suffered a crushing defeat, and many of their chariots and soldiers fell on the battlefield. The defeat was so devastating that the remaining Syrian states made peace with Israel, choosing to submit rather than continue to oppose David. They recognized that Israel was favored by God and that resistance was futile. This victory over the Syrians and Ammonites did not just bring peace to Israel. It also solidified David's reputation as a powerful and wise leader, blessed by God. The surrounding nations now respected Israel's strength and feared the consequences of provoking them. David's triumph served as a testimony of God's protection over Israel and his anointing over David as king. Each victory demonstrated that success comes not merely from military strategy or numbers, but from trusting in God and acting with courage and integrity. David's battles with the Ammonites and Syrians offer timeless lessons. First, his humility in seeking God's guidance, even when insulted, reflects the wisdom of not reacting impulsively. David did not rush to revenge. He prepared thoughtfully and waited for the right moment. Secondly, Joab's courageous leadership reminds us of the importance of faithfulness and courage when facing overwhelming odds. His words to his men, "Strong, and may the Lord do what is good in his sight," serve as a powerful reminder that we are called to act boldly and trust in God's outcome. And finally, David's ultimate victory over the Syrians reminds us that with God, no enemy is too powerful and no challenge too great. David's story teaches us that our strength lies in faith, patience, and humility. In the life of King David, few events brought more pain than the rebellion led by his own son, Absalom. This was not just a battle for the throne of Israel, but a heartbreaking struggle between a father and his son. Let's delve further. The seeds of Absalom's rebellion were sown long before the first sword was drawn. Absalom, David's third son, was handsome, charismatic, and beloved by the people. But his relationship with his father grew strained after his sister Tamar was violated by their half-brother Ammon. When David failed to punish Ammon, Absalom took matters into his own hands, killing Amnon and fleeing into exile. After several years, David allowed Absalom to return to Jerusalem, but their relationship remained cold and distant. Absalom began to harbor deep resentment and saw an opportunity to seize the throne for himself. Slowly, he began winning the hearts of the people, positioning himself as a champion of justice and a better leader for Israel. Absalom's plan was carefully crafted. He built a following among the people of Israel, and when the time was right, he went to Hebron under the guise of making a vow to God. There he declared himself king, and many in Israel rallied to his cause. When David learned of Absalom's uprising, he faced a heart-wrenching decision. Rather than engage in a brutal civil war within the holy city, he chose to leave Jerusalem. David, along with his loyal followers, fled the city to avoid bloodshed. It was a moment of profound sorrow. David, the man who had united Israel and conquered Jerusalem, now found himself a fugitive in his own land, pursued by his own son. As he crossed the Kidron Valley and ascended the Mount of Olives, David wept. His loyal followers, men like Ittai the Gittite and Zadok the priest, offered their support, showing their unwavering loyalty. Even in his despair, David placed his trust in God. He left Jerusalem not in defeat but in faith, praying that God's will would be done and that his kingdom would be spared from violence. As Absalom took control of Jerusalem, he received advice from two of his counselors, Ahithophel and Hushai. Ahithophel, a brilliant strategist, urged Absalom to pursue David immediately while he was vulnerable and on the run. But Hushai, secretly loyal to David, advised Absalom to wait and gather more forces. In a pivotal decision, Absalom ignored Ahithophel's counsel, buying David precious time. This delay proved disastrous for Absalom. It allowed David to regroup, organize his forces, and prepare for battle. David's experience as a warrior and his strategic mind gave him a significant advantage over his son. With his forces assembled, David divided them into 3 units under his loyal commanders, Joab, Abishai, and Ittai the Gittite. He stationed his army in the forest of Ephraim, a dense and rugged terrain that would favor his smaller, well-trained force against Absalom's larger army. David also speaks to his commanders by saying, "Deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake." Even in the heat of battle, David's heart ached for his son, hoping against hope that he might be spared. As the two forces clashed in the forest, chaos ensued. The thick woods and uneven terrain caused confusion among Absalom's men, and many fell in the harsh conditions. David's men, familiar with the terrain and highly skilled, overwhelmed the rebels. The Bible says that more men died in the forest than by the sword that day. During the battle, Absalom found himself separated from his troops and fleeing through the forest. In a tragic twist of fate, his long hair became entangled in the branches of a large tree, leaving him helplessly suspended as his mule ran off beneath him. When Joab, David's general, heard of Absalom's predicament, he seized the opportunity. Ignoring David's command to spare Absalom, Joab and his men struck down the rebellious prince, ending the insurrection but sealing Absalom's tragic fate. With Absalom's death, the battle came to an abrupt end. The rebel forces scattered, and David's men secured victory. Yet, this was a bittersweet triumph for David, who had hoped to reconcile with his son. News of the victory was quickly overshadowed by the devastating report of Absalom's death. David was heartbroken. He wept openly, crying out, "O my son Absalom! My son Absalom! Would I had died instead of you, Absalom! My son, my son!" David's lament is one of the most poignant scenes in the Bible. Despite Absalom's rebellion, David's love for his son never wavered. The king's heart was torn between his duty to Israel and his personal loss as a father. Even Joab, who had secured the kingdom's safety by killing Absalom, recognized that David's sorrow could demoralize the troops. He confronted David, urging him to show gratitude to the men who had risked their lives for him. The rebellion of Absalom left a lasting impact on David's life and reign. It was a reminder of the complex, painful nature of family loyalty, power, and the consequences of sin. David's grief over Absalom's death haunted him, casting a shadow over his remaining years as king. This is also a reminder that even great kings are not immune to personal loss and family betrayal. David's victory over Absalom came at a great cost, revealing the burden of leadership and the heartache of a father torn by love and duty. Thank you for joining us in exploring the story of David and his epic battles fought in the Bible and the life lessons of each battles fought. In the end, David's story reminds us of the importance of faith, forgiveness, and humility even in the face of great tragedy. If you enjoyed this journey through one of the Bible's most poignant stories, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more insights from the life of King David. His journey is a testament to the highs and lows of life and the enduring power of faith.